Welcome to Learning Physics with me. In the past few sessions, we have been studying electrostatics. In the last session, I introduced you to the concept of an electric field. I hope you enjoyed that lesson. Please revise your lessons before you attend any new session. In this session, I will introduce you to the concept of electric field lines, which constitute an electric field. And also, I will introduce you to the concept of electric flux, which gives us an idea of the strength of the electric field at that point. I hope you enjoyed today's lesson, so pay attention and all the best. Before I start the lesson, I'll give you a brief summary of what we are going to learn today. What are the electrical lines of force? The electrical lines of force are imaginary lines or curves. Imaginary lines or curves near a charge or a system of charges so that the tangent to it at any point, let us say at this point, the tangent to it at any point is in the direction of the electrical field vector at that point. And what is the electrical flux? The electrical flux is a measure of the electrical field lines through a given area. Suppose I have a small area delta S. The electrical field passing through it is E, vector E. Then the flux through this small area delta phi is equal to the product of the electrical field vector E and the area vector S. If the electrical field makes an angle with the area vector, let's say an angle theta, then the magnitude of this field is given by E delta S cos theta, where theta is the angle between the area vector and the electrical field vector. I choose small elements of area over the complete given surface and then calculate the flux through each of those elements and sum it up, integrate. So I get the flux through the complete surface phi given by the integral of E delta S. So that in summary is what we are going to learn today. In the last session, we learned about the electric field. The electric field is a vector quantity. So we can represent the electric field pictorially by using an arrow, the length of the arrow equal to the magnitude and the direction as per the direction of the electric field. Let there be a point charge placed at some place and let us call that place the origin O. I have here the point charge and I call this as the origin. Draw vectors at various points with their lengths proportional to the electric field at that point and pointing in the direction along the direction of the electric field at that point. Let us say I want to draw the electric field at this point. If the electric field here has a certain magnitude, I draw the length of the arrow as per that magnitude and the direction of the arrow is also as per the direction of the electric field at this point. The magnitude of the electric field decreases inversely as the square of the distance from the charge. Farther I go away from the charge, the strength of the electric field decreases. Now let us say I want to depict the strength of the electric field here. As I said earlier, the length of the arrow indicates the magnitude of the field here and the direction of the arrow gives the direction of the field here. The length of this arrow gives the magnitude of the field here, and the direction of this arrow specifies the direction of the electrical field vector at this point. Now the vectors get shorter and shorter as we go away from the charge. Let us say I want to depict the electrical field here. The electrical field magnitude is depicted by the length of the arrow and the direction by the arrow again. Now you will see the magnitude depicted by the arrow here is lesser than the magnitude depicted by the arrow here, which is lesser than the magnitude depicted by the arrow here. So as I am going away, the strength of the electric field is decreasing. Now in this figure, each arrow indicates the electric field at that point. This arrow indicates the electric field at this point. This arrow indicates the electric field at this point. Similarly, every arrow indicates the electric field at the base of that arrow. Now, the electric field here is indicated by this arrow. The electric field here is indicated by this arrow. Electric field here is indicated by this arrow. In this case, all the three arrows are pointing in the same direction. Suppose I connect all three arrows. What do I get? I'll get a line here. If I join all these arrows, I'll get a line here. Similarly, if I join all these arrows, I'll get a line here. So similarly, if I join all these arrows, I will get a line. So this line is called an electric field line. This way, I get many field lines. Each field line would be pointing in a different direction. See here, each field line will be pointing in a different direction. Now earlier, I said that the length of the arrow indicates the strength of the field at the base of this arrow. Now that I have joined all the arrows, I have a single line. So, have I lost the information about the strength of the field at any point? How do I know the strength of the field at this point? How do I know the strength of the field at this point? Or how do I know the strength of the field at this point? Have I lost this information by joining the arrows and converting that into a field line? Not really. The information about the strength of the field is now represented by the density of field lines. The field E is strong near the charge, where the density of field lines is more as the lines are closer to each other. As we go farther and farther away, the field gets weaker and the density of field lines is less. This results in well separated lines as we go away from the charge. Now you will say, sir, I can draw more number of lines starting from the source charge. That's absolutely true. In fact, I will say you can draw an infinite number of lines starting from any point. But what is important is not the number of lines, but the relative density of lines in various regions. Nearer the charge, the lines are closer. Away from the charge, the lines are farther from each other. The number of lines passing through a unit area decreases as we go further and further away from the source charge. Now the figure here shows a set of field lines. Now these are all field lines, right? And let us say this point O is the origin. Now I can imagine two equal area elements. One area element here near R and another area element S at this place. Both these are small area elements and both these are equal in size. And both of them are normal to the field lines. That means the field lines here are perpendicular to this area elements. Now the number of field lines passing through the area R and passing through the area S is proportional to the strength of the electrical field at these points. Now the picture shows here that the field at R is stronger than the field at S. You see here, more number of lines seem to be passing through this small area, and the same area is here at S. Lesser number of lines are passing through it. The area is related to a solid angle that it forms at the origin. If you see an ice cream cone, it is a solid angle. Now, in case of an angle in two dimensions, it is represented like this. If I have a small line element delta L, and let us say it is placed at a distance r from some origin O, then there is a small angle delta theta that this delta L subtends, and this angle theta, delta theta, is given by delta L divided by R. Similarly, if I have a solid angle and let that solid angle, let's call it delta omega, let us say it is subtended by a small perpendicular area delta S, that is a covering on the ice cream cone, that flat piece of paper there. It has a small area delta S. Let us say it is at a distance R. That means the length of your cone is R and the angle subtended is delta omega. Then the angle is delta S divided by R square. Now in a given solid angle, the number of radial lines remains the same. Now look here, I have a solid angle here. This is our ice cream cone. Now the number of lines passing through this place and the number of lines passing through this place is the same. So given a solid angle, the number of radial field lines passing through it is same. Now in this figure here, there are 2 points. One is P1 and the second point is P2. And let us say these are at distances R1 and R2 from the origin. Now if the angle is delta omega for both, if the distances are R, then what is this area P1? Area P1 is R1 square into delta omega. And what is the area R2? P2. P2 is R2 square into delta omega. Area P1 is R1 square into delta omega. Area at P2 is R2 square into delta omega. Now we know that the area P2 is much bigger than the area P1. But the number of lines passing through both of them is same. Let us say n number of lines are passing through both P1 and P2. The number of field lines cutting the unit area at P1, number of lines is n and the area is given by R1 square delta omega. So the number of lines per unit area is n divided by the area R1 square delta omega, and at P2 the number of lines per unit area is the total number of lines n divided by the area R2 square delta omega. Now number of lines are same in both cases, but the area is bigger in case of P2. So the number of lines per unit area in P2 is much less. The density of lines at P1 is more than the density of lines at P2. Now, in this relation, we found n is common, delta omega is common. Now what is different? 1 upon r square. So the strength of the field at this point and this point is proportional to 1 by r square. Now this picture of field lines was invented by Faraday to visualize the electric fields around charges. In general, an electric field line is a curve drawn in such a way that the tangent to it at each point is the direction of the net electrical field vector at that point. A tangent shows two possible directions, so an arrow on the curve is necessary to specify the direction of the electric field from two possible directions. A field line is a space curve. It is not a curve drawn on a piece of paper or on the flat computer screen. It is a curve in three-dimensional space. The field lines of a single positive charge point radially outward in 3D space. Here, there is a positive charge. All the field lines point outwards when Q is positive or when Q is greater than 0. The field lines of a single negative charge are radially inward in the 3D space. So here you see I have a negative charge and all the lines are pointing inwards. And what is Q? Q is negative. Q is less than 0. The field lines around a system of two positive charges show a clear picture of their mutual repulsion. Here I have a positive charge and a positive charge. These always repel each other. So will a field line go from this charge to this charge? No, they'll go away. So when I have two positive charges, it shows a clear picture of repulsion. The field lines around a system of two equal and opposite charges. I have plus Q here and minus Q here. This is also called a dipole. This shows a picture of clear mutual attraction. See, the lines are going from plus Q to minus Q, plus Q to minus Q. Even this line goes far away and then ultimately comes to minus Q. There are some important properties of field lines. Now what are these? First, the field lines start from a positive charge and end at a negative charge. The field line start at a positive charge and end at a negative charge. If there is a single charge, positive charge, it starts at that charge and ends at infinity. If there is a single negative charge, it starts at infinity and ends at the negative charge. In a charge-free region, the electrical field lines are continuous. See, all these are continuous lines. There are no breaks. Next, very important, two field lines can never cross each other because if that happens, the field at that point will have two possible directions. It will not have a unique direction. So this is not possible. So two field lines cannot intersect each other. Fourthly, the electrostatic field lines do not form any closed loops. This means they don't start from a positive charge, go around and again come back to the positive charge. This follows from the conservative nature of the electric field. Now we come to the electric flux. Consider the flow of a liquid with velocity v, and it is going through a tube, and the cross section of the tube is ds, and this aperture here is perpendicular to the direction of the flow. The rate of flow of liquid is given by the volume crossing the area per unit time. So the velocity is v, the cross section is ds. So in 1 second, this cylinder full of fluid would have gone past this aperture. So what is the volume of this cylinder? Pi r square h. The area pi r square is this ds, and h, distance in 1 second, is v. So the volume is vds. So the volume vds is the volume crossing this area in unit time. Now this is supposed to be the flux, or the rate of change of the fluid flowing across the plane. Now let us say if the aperture which we had provided to the field is not perpendicular to the direction of flow. Let us say it is tilted to the direction of flow at some angle, and let's say it makes an angle theta. Then the projected area of this aperture is v ds cos theta. It is ds cos theta. So the volume which flows across this tilted aperture is v ds cos theta. Therefore, the flux of the fluid across this cross section which is tilted is given by v n hat ds. And what is n hat? N hat is a unit vector. In an electric field, we define a similar quantity based on the number of field lines that cross this surface, and we call that as electric flux. Now we should, however, note that in the case of a fluid flow, there is a physical flow, but here in electricity, there is no physically observable quantity or a flow. Now, if we place a small plane element, there is a small plane element here of area delta S normal to the electric field at this point. The electric field is like this, and the plane element we have placed is perpendicular to it. Then the number of field lines passing through this area element is given by E into delta S. Suppose I tilt this area element. Instead of keeping it perpendicular to the electric field, I tilt it. Then the number of field lines passing through this area element will be less. The projection of this area element normal to E is delta S, the area, into cos theta, the angle that it is making with the normal. When theta is 90 degrees, cos 90 is what? 0. So if I have this area element along the electric field, theta is 0. In that case, what will happen? No field lines will cross this area. The orientation and magnitude of the area are both important to us. More the area, more the field lines passing, and less the area, less field lines. At the same time, if the area is perpendicular to the electric field, maximum field lines. If it is parallel to the electric field, no field lines will pass through it. Now, in the case of a stream, the amount of water flowing through a ring, suppose I hold a ring in a flow of water, the amount of water passing through it will depend on how I hold the ring. If I hold it perpendicular to the flow, maximum water will flow through it. If I hold it in some other orientation, lesser water will flow through it. This shows that an area element has to be treated as a vector. That means it has to have a magnitude as well as a direction. Now, how do I specify the area? How do I show an area, plane area, as a vector? Now, the normal to this plane, any plane area, the perpendicular to this plane specifies the orientation of that plane. Thus, the direction of a plane area vector is along its normal. Now, if there is a curved surface, how do I associate a vector with it? I can divide that curved surface into number of small, very small area elements, and each area element I can treat it as a plane and I can associate a vector with it. But there is a question. The direction of the area element is along the normal, but the normal, the perpendicular which we draw here, points in two directions. So which direction do we choose? Now there is a convention. The vector associated with every area element of a closed surface is taken to be in the direction of the outward normal. Now here is a small area element that we have taken of some of the big area. We have drawn a perpendicular to it. Now this perpendicular will have a direction here and the other direction of this line will be downwards. But what is the convention? The convention is direction is the outward normal. As per this convention, the area element vector delta S. Now I am considering this area as a vector. The vector delta S at a point on the closed surface. I give the magnitude of the vector as delta S and the unit vector along the normal is n hat. So I have got delta as n hat, which is a vectorial representation of this area element. Here, delta S is the magnitude of the area and n hat is the unit vector in the direction of the outward normal to this point. Now, we can define the electrical flux delta phi through an area element delta S by delta phi as electrical field vector E multiplied by the area vector S, which we just now discussed. Now, the magnitude of this would be E, the magnitude of the electrical field multiplied by delta S cos theta angle between the area vector and the electrical field vector. Here I got that small area and this is the unit vector which is along the normal, outward normal to this small chosen area. Now this is proportional to the number of field lines passing through that area element. Now the angle theta, now this is the direction of the area element n hat, and suppose the direction of the field is this way. The angle between the direction of the field and n hat is supposed to be the angle theta. For a closed surface, we have already stated the convention. Theta is the angle between E and the outward normal. The expression E delta S cos theta means E times the projection of area normal to E. I can look it in another way also. It is a component of E along the normal to the area element times the magnitude area of the area element. But don't worry about all this. Just remember that delta phi is electrical vector E multiplied by the area vector delta S, and the magnitude is E delta S cos theta. The unit of electric flux is newtons per coulomb meter square. The basic definition of electric flux is given by this equation delta phi equal to E delta S equal to E delta S cos theta. Now this can be used to calculate the total flux through any given surface. We can divide the surface area into small elements. Then calculate the flux at each element and sum up the flux for the complete area. So the total flux through a surface, total flux phi, I get by a summation of E delta S for each element. Now this involves a bit of a approximation. What is that approximation? We have assumed that the electrical flux is constant, is uniform over that chosen area element. Within that area element, we assume that the electrical flux is not changing. Now, to be mathematically very exact, we can do this by simply taking the limit of delta S tending to 0. That means we take the area element smaller and smaller as possible. So if I take that and then calculate for each element and integrate, then phi, the total flux over area, is equal to integral of E ds. Hope you enjoyed this session. I am looking forward to meet you the next time again. Thank you and all the best.